My dear students, from today we are going to deal with a very important section from the textbook of 12th standard, and that is poetry section. Students, you have been learning, you have been studying poetry since your childhood. But have you ever tried to find out the differences between prose and poetry? Or have you ever thought about the salient features or the characteristics of poem or poetry? Or have you ever thought about what makes a piece of writing a poem? Friends, it is very essential, it is very necessary to understand the features of poetry for the better understanding of a poem, for the analysis of a poem, and for the appreciation of poem. So let's have a short look at the features of poetry. The first and the most important feature of poetry is that it has rhyme and rhythm. Rhyme is the repetition of sound, and a rhythm, another word for rhythm, is meter. What is meter? Meter is the occurrence of stressed and unstressed syllabic pattern in the line of a poem, or it is a unit of rhythm, or meter is the pattern of beats. Another feature of poetry is that the words are limited, but friends, though the words are limited, it has the deepest meaning. You must have heard a kirtankar. That kirtankar just takes a few lines from an abhanga and he goes on preaching, or he goes on giving his kirtan continuously, at least for 3 hours. Here you can imagine what a deep meaning the lines of or the poem might be having. The next feature of poem is there are lines. In prose there are sentences, but in poetry there are lines, and lines are used to form stanzas. Means lines and stanzas are the features of poetry. Another feature is the language is figurative and rhythmical. Rhythmical means musical. Musicality is one of the features of poetry. And figurative language. The poet does not convey his idea directly. On the contrary, he conveys his ideas with the help of symbolism, with the help of figurative language. Take a simple example. If there is a sentence in prose, she wears black dress. She wears black dress. It means that the literal or the simple meaning of that sentence may be the color of her dress is black. But if the same thing is there in poetry, it means that a line, she wears black dress, is there in poetry, then it may have more than one meanings. The literal meaning will be obviously the color of her dress is black, but if you look deeper, you will get another meaning. You will come to know that poet wants to convey us perhaps that her nature is black, her heart is black, she does not have fair nature, she is having a crooked mind. Forgetting the meaning from poem, you have to read the poem again and again, because the poet uses the figurative language. You read the poem 100 times and you will get 100 different meanings. You have to have a close reading of each and every word. You have to have a minute scrutiny of the form of the poem as well as of the each and every word of the poem, and then only you will reach to the final meaning of poetry. So after understanding the features of poetry, now let's turn to our textbook, and today in this video we are going to deal with a very important, very beautiful poem, that is poem number 8 from the textbook of 12th standard, and the name of the title of the poem is Small Towns and Rivers. But friends, before going directly to the poem, I want to tell about the region that is shown here in this map. It is very essential to understand the geographical, the political, and the social background of this region for the better understanding of our poem. You know that this region has a large diversity. This region that is shown here is known as the northeast region of India. You know that there are 7 states, and including Sikkim there are 8 states in this region. This region has a large diversity, and this region is joined to the Indian heartland, that is the main part of India, by Siliguri corridor, and it is just a 21-kilometer wide area, and this area is known as the Chicken Neck also. There are 475 ethnic groups. Ethnic groups means the racial groups, and 400 languages and dialects are spoken in these states. The neighboring countries are the countries like China, Bhutan, Myanmar, Bangladesh. Being far from the Indian heartland and having a lot of diversity, this region is facing so many problems. For example, as I told you that there are so many indigenous tribes having their own cultures, traditions, folklore, languages, and these indigenous tribes are always fighting. They are having always conflicts among themselves. And another problem of this area is that there are no good education facilities, and because of this, unemployment problem is there. They have the inability to compete with the non-tribal businesses, as well as one of the major problems is that the migration from the neighboring states or the neighboring countries like Bangladesh, Bhutan and Myanmar. The migrated people are putting extra load, extra pressure on the limited resources that they have. For example, they don't have much of the fertile land, and because of the migrated people, there has been a kind of competition, and there are always conflicts between the aboriginal tribes and the migrated people. We know that the hilly area is there, and that's why this region has not been much developed. Then the government is not quite interested, or it has the apathetic attitude towards this region, and because of all these things, the disturbance to their peace, culture, traditions and folklore is taking place. What are the consequences or results of all these problems? One of the major results, one of the major consequences is that these tribes have gone into minority position. Means the number of people are migrating to these states, to this region from the neighboring states and from neighboring countries like Bangladesh, Bhutan, Myanmar, and that's why their population is increasing day by day, and these tribes, these indigenous tribes have gone into minority state. And then they have to fight for their rights, and for this reason there has been a rise of 50 ethnic rebel or militant groups. You know that there is Ulfa in Assam and Elf in Arunachal Pradesh. These groups or these people, the people of this region, demand autonomy or cessation or separation. And for this demand, there has been always insurgencies in this region. There have always been uprisings, political unrest in this region. Arunachal Pradesh, to which our poetess belongs, was a peaceful state, but because of its proximity, because of its nearness to Nagaland and Myanmar, this state, the peace of this state also is being affected. Even in this state also, there have always been uprisings. There has always been political unrest. After understanding the geographical, the political and social background of the northeastern part of India, now let's turn to our poem. I told you the title of the poem is Small Towns and Rivers. But before that, let's try to know about the poetess Mamang Dai. She was born in 1957 at Pasighat, East Siang district from Arunachal Pradesh. She is a very famous, well-known poet, novelist and journalist. She had been chosen for IAS in 1979, and she is very well versed, or she knows the languages Adi and English. Her notable works are The Sky Queen, Stupid Cupid, Mountain Harvest, The Food of Arunachal Pradesh and River Poems. River poems is the collection of poems from which the present poem is taken for our study. She has received the Padma Shri and very famous Sahitya Akademi Award also in 2017. The poetess Mamang Dai belongs to Adi tribe from Pasighat of Arunachal Pradesh. She takes or she has a great pride for the heritage, for rich heritage of her land, that is of Arunachal Pradesh, because she believes that the rich heritage of her land saves the tribal elements from urbanization and modernization that is taking place in the name of progress, development. She describes in her literature, she describes or she reveals the life of Arunachal Pradesh, the nature of Arunachal Pradesh, the natural beauty, tribal myths, legends with religious and mythical elements in her literature. She is a neo-romantic poetess. Neo-romantic means semi-romantic. The revival of Romanticism in the 20th century or in modern age, modern period is called as Neo-Romanticism. These writers follow the features of Romanticism of the 18th century. What were the features? One of the features was the ideology of pantheism. Pantheism means that these writers thought or think that nature is the creation, the manifestation of God. Means God is there, the existence of God is there in each and every object of nature, flowers, leaves, trees, rocks, rivers, everything. And they have a kind of emotional attachment to nature. And they think that nature is sacred, nature is eternal, immortal. And this ideology of pantheism is there in the present poem also. And that's why Mamang Dai is called as a neo-romantic poetess. Her poems show nature and Shelley's revolutionary vision against modern materialistic world and the vision for a better future. We know that this poem ends with an optimistic note, means that a visionary note. Then she says that the traditional belief of Adi community to which she belongs is full of respect for nature. Means Adi community respect nature. Everything has life. In one of the interviews, she said that everything has life. Rocks, stones, trees, rivers, hills, and all life is sacred. Everything has life means God is there in everything, and all these things of God are sacred. This is called as pantheism. Then she celebrates the rich culture and rituals of northeastern region. She also expresses the feelings of lament because these perennial rituals and traditions are threatened by modernization. I told you that in the name of progress, in the name of development, urbanization, modernization is taking place, and that's why the rich heritage of culture, the rich heritage of rituals is being disturbed by modernization. And that's why she expresses her lament, she expresses her grief, sorrow over this phenomenon, over this scenario of modern age. Now let's turn to the poem, and before studying or reading or having close reading and close analysis of the poem, let's have a look at some of the major themes that are expressed by Mamang Dai in the poem Small Towns and Rivers. One of the major themes of the poem is a picture of nature or love for nature. We know that there are references to trees, river and mountains in the poem. So this is one of the major themes of the poem. Then there are references to rituals, customs, traditions of the tribal community. This also can be the theme of the poem. The most important theme of the poem, and that is prevalent throughout the poem, is the picture of political unrest. We know that we have already studied that in these states, in Arunachal Pradesh or in remaining states of northeastern part of India, political unrest is there. Why? because of the conflicts, the frequent conflicts between the militants. Militants means Vidrohi, militants or insurgents, and military. The conflicts between the militants and the migrated people from the neighboring countries or other states. And because of these conflicts, there have always been political unrest. And the poetess expresses her lament over this scenario in the very first line. Then modernization or urbanization is also one of the important major themes of the poem. Because of the process of modernization or urbanization, the people of northeastern region have the fear in their mind that their culture, tradition, rituals, their folklore, flora and fauna, all these things are getting disturbed. And that's why there have always been conflicts between the state and the central government, the militant groups and the government. And this also is one of the major themes of the poem. Now let's turn to the poem and have a close reading of the poem. I will try to explain and analyze each and every line of the poem. The title of the poem is Small Towns and Rivers by the poetess Mamang Dai. Small towns always remind me of death. In the very first line of the poem, the poetess expresses her deep sorrow, her deep lament, grief, because whenever she sees small towns, she reminds death. Because she is talking about the towns that are there in the northeastern part of India. Death is a common thing. Death is a common phenomenon. Death is a common scenario in this region because of the conflicts between militants and the military. The conflict between militants and the migrated people. And because of that, death has become a common thing. And that's why the poetess says that whenever I see small towns, the towns like my own town, at that time I remember death. My hometown lies calmly amidst the trees. Here the poetess wants to suggest us that her hometown is surrounded by trees. It is there in the lap of nature. Amidst means among. It is among the trees. It is surrounded by the trees and it lies there in the lap of nature. And as it is in the lap of nature, it is calm. It is peaceful. There is peace in my town. It means that in this line, the poetess describes the beauty of nature. At the same time, if you look at this line through different lenses, through different angles, you will come to know that the town is calm perhaps because of the curfews that have taken place after the conflicts, after the political unrest. It is always the same in summer or winter. Time passes. Days pass. Months pass. Weeks pass. Years pass. But this situation of calmness does not change. It means that there is no effect of the passing time on the situation that is there in the town of the poetess. With the dust flying or the wind howling down the gorge, gorge means valley. Now look at the line with the dust flying. Dust may be the symbol of modernization or urbanization. And because of the flying dust, the wind is howling. Howling, the wind is not producing the sweet melodious sound. It is howling, means howling wind or flying dust These are the symbols used for modernization or urbanization. Wind is howling. It means that it is the cry of the indigenous people. They have the fear in their mind that because of urbanization, their tradition, their culture, their rituals, their folklore, their flora and fauna, each and everything will be disturbed. And that's why the poetess say the wind howling means it is crying. It is indicating the cry of the aboriginal people, the cry of the tribal people, indigenous people. In the first 4 lines of the first stanza, human being is shown to be inactive, living in peace without any activity. But in the last 2 lines of the first stanza, nature is shown to be active, as it is the creation of God. The existence of God is there in each and every object of nature. Just the other day, someone died. In the dreadful silence we wept. It means that the poetess says that after every other day someone dies, means death is common. In the dreadful silence we wept, looking at the sad wraith of tuberoses. Dreadful silence perhaps refers to the curfews that take place after the conflicts, after the uprising, after the political unrest. And when deaths take place and when the curfews are implemented, at that time we look at the wreath of tuberoses. A wreath means a kind of garland made with the help of tuberoses. Tuberoses means kind of flowers, and wreath is a garland that is made in which tuberoses are woven. And we look at those garlands. Those garlands are supposed to be put on the body of the dead. And we look at those garlands and we weep, we cry, we express our grief, our sorrow. Life and death, only rituals are permanent. Always life and death, life and death. Look at this ironical statement. Life is not permanent, death is not permanent. These are temporal, these are transient, these are ephemeral, and whereas the rituals are permanent. The rituals, the people, the tribes had been performing the rituals, and we also are performing the rituals and will be performed in future also. Rituals, customs, nature, all these things are permanent, but human life is temporal. It is not permanent. It is not immortal. It is mortal. The river has a soul. The poetess is using the ideology of pantheism. It means that she believes that every object of nature, in every object of nature, the existence of God is there. Here, the river has been given the human quality of having soul, having spirit. And this river, in summer, it cuts through the land like a torrent of grief. Look at the expression torrent of grief. The grief, the sorrow of those people, of the northeastern people, is so great, it looks as if it is a torrent of water. It means that there is indirect comparison between the intense grief of the northeastern people and the torrent of water. And this grief takes place in the harsh situation. The situation is so harsh, and the harshness of the situation is expressed through the word summer. Summer is the symbol of harshness. Though the river is there which is having life, like that, though the nature is there which is surrounded by the nature, which is surrounded by the life, but the situation of the people has become like summer. It has become harsh, it has become so worst. And in this situation, their grief is so intense that it is compared to the torrent of water. Sometimes I think it holds its breath. Now look at this line. In this line, the poetess is suggesting the urbanization process. Because of the urbanization, because of the modernization, the river is flowing, but sometimes it holds its breath, seeking a land of fish and stars. Seeking a land of fish and stars. Now, first of all, we will look at these lines through the angle, through the lenses of urbanization. And then we will look at these lines through different angle. If you look at these lines through the angle of urbanization, you will come to know that the river holds its breath. It means that because of urbanization, modernization, perhaps because of the litter that is spread into the water of the river, there is the river also wishes to hold its breath. Holding its breath means we human beings also hold our breath when dirt is there. In the same way, the people, the modernization, because of the modernization, the river is becoming dirty, and that's why it is holding its breath, and it is seeking a land of fish and stars. Fish live in fresh water, the water that should be fresh, and the stars should twinkle or sparkle in the water of that river, and the river is looking for such situation. It is looking for the fresh water where the fish will be there and the stars will be reflecting in the water of that river. This is one angle. And if you look at these lines through a different angle, through different lenses, you will get another idea. Sometimes I think it holds its breath means the river which is the witness to the conflicts, the bloodsheds, the deaths, also cannot bear this scenario, these situations, and that's why it wants to hold its breath, and it wants to seek, or it is seeking, a land of fish and stars. A land of fish and stars. It means that this line indicates the river's wish to escape in the legendary land of fish and stars, where the world was, when the world was being created, and that world was pure, that world was free of sin, and the river wants to escape in the legendary land of fish and stars, because that river cannot bear the situation of bloodshed, of conflict and deaths that is taking place in the northeastern part. The river has a soul. It knows stretching past the town, from the first drop of rain to dry earth, the mist of mountain tops. The river knows the immortality of water. In this stanza also, the poetess has used the ideology of pantheism, whereas in each and every object of nature, the existence of God is there. And here in water is supposed to be immortal because it is the natural object, it is the creation of God, and it is immortal, whereas the human life is mortal, it is ephemeral, it is temporal. But the object like water, which is a natural object and in which God resides, it is immortal. It rains, it turns into water vapor, and then it becomes the mist, it becomes the fog on mountain tops, and once again it turns into droplets of water, and once again it falls down in the form of water, but it never dies. It means that water is immortal. The natural object like water is immortal, whereas human life is mortal. A shrine of happy pictures marks the days of childhood. It means that here the poetess wants to suggest us. Shrine means a holy place, and her own town was a shrine when she was a child. At that time, or before some years, Her own town was a shrine. It was a holy place where everywhere there was happiness. There were no conflicts. And she remembers those happy pictures of the shrine, means of the holy place of her own town, of her childhood now. Small towns grow with anxiety for the future, but nowadays, because of the urbanization, modernization, these small towns are having always kind of anxiety. Anxiety means fear. The flora and fauna of that region is being destroyed, and because of that, they have the fear in their mind that their future is not sure. The oral tradition, the heritage will not be there to be forwarded for the future generation, because the migrants are also coming from the neighboring states and the neighboring countries, and they are going into minority position, and that's why they have always the anxiety, the fear for future. The dead are placed pointing west. When the soul rises, it will walk into the golden east, into the house of the sun. Here in this stanza, we get the reference to one more ritual. Earlier in this poem, we saw the ritual of placing the wreath on the body of the dead. And here in this stanza, the ritual of placing the dead pointing west is there. They believe that when the soul will rise out of the body, it will go directly into the east. What is there in the east? In the east, perhaps they believe that in the east, the heaven is there. As well as in the east, the abode of the sun or the house of the sun is there. Perhaps these tribes believe that though throughout the life a person could not enjoy his life, a person could not get the peace of mind due to the conflicts, perhaps after death his soul will get the eternal peace. His soul will become immortal because it will be residing, it will be living in the heaven. In the cool bamboo, restored in sunlight, life matters like this. Here the poetess suggests us, tells us that the bamboo gets restored in the sunlight. It means that though the sunlight is scorching, unbearable, the bamboo gets restored. It means that though the situation of the earth is northeastern part region is unbearable, the life will get restored. Even it may be after death. As I told you earlier, the soul will go directly to the east where heaven is there, where the abode, where the home of sun is there. It means that after bearing, after suffering from all these scorching or all these harsh situations of life, after that at least his soul may get eternal peace in the heaven, as if the cool bamboo gets its coolness or gets restored in the sunlight. And life matters like this. The principle of life is like this, like bamboo that is getting restored in sunlight. In small towns by the river, we all want to walk with the gods. Here once again you can see a reference to the river. River is a part of nature, and nature is the creation of God. I told you that nature or love for nature is one of the dominant themes of this poem. The poetess once again in the last line says that we all want to walk with the gods. Who are the gods? Gods for them may be the objects of nature like rocks, rivers, flowers, trees. Each and every object of nature is God for those tribes. And here the poetess wants to tell us that we want to live in the vicinity, in the company of nature peacefully. We all want to walk with gods, means we all want to live with trees, flowers, rocks, rivers, each and every object of nature, because they believe that the existence of God is there in all these objects of nature. So in the last line also, the poetess is showing her disappointment for the modernization, for the urbanization. She is having the strong urge, she is having the strong will to let us live in the vicinity, in the company of nature. And this is possible only when we think about the conservation of nature. Only when there is a kind of balance between nature and the urbanization. The poem ends with an optimistic note, and she appeals, or she urges, that we all want to live in nature, beside the nature, in the company of nature. So friends, I have tried my level best to explain and analyze each and every line of the poem. I hope that you have understood the poem. But do not stop watching the video till the end, because each and every question, the answers of each and every question that are there in the textbook are given here in this video. You go through the answer, and if you have any queries or any doubts, try to clarify those doubts with the help of those answers. In the next video, we will be dealing with another poem. Until then, bye.